So great to be here with all of you. I've chosen the theme actually sustainable safety. Is there anyone who disagree with me that safety is important? Then the question comes, do we mean the same thing with safety? If I say the word summer to you, what does that mean? To me, summer means being at the coast. Swimming. To some of you, it means something totally different. And this is why I would like to talk about sustainable safety, because safety is relevant, but it's important that we all work with it and come together in the end. So I would like to start by actually thanking my grandfather, my grandparents, and my parents, because they brought me up in a country where we were allowed to have freedom of speech, where we were celebrating teamwork, and where we were allowed to have different opinions, thinking about what about this, what about that, what if, what if. Because that have helped me to shape the way I lead and the way we act at Volvo. These were the founders that were talking about safety already back about 100 years ago. But I said safety is relative, like I said about the summer. So I don't know how many of you were born in the 70s. I was born in the 70s. And I remember when I was 6 years old, I was leaning in between my parents. They were sitting in the front, and I was leaning, standing, fighting with my dog about the space. Who should be able to sit there or stand there? They were actually seated by the three-point seat belt that later were developed by the generation of my grandfather and the generation of my father and mother. So they felt safe. I also felt safe because I was there with my parents. But what would have happened if there was a rapid deceleration, or in the worst case, a crash? Both me and the dog would probably be killed. Perhaps we would have been killed or killed my parents as well in that crash, even if they were seated. So we're going back to the 70s, safety at that time is not what I refer to safety as today. But standing there between the seats, I was what I refer to unconsciously incompetent. Because when it comes to safety and when it comes to development, I prefer to see everything as a system, because you need to have it in a context. And we're all part of a system. At that time, standing between the seats, I was part of a system. I was part of a car, I was part of a traffic system, and something was about to happen. And I grew up understanding this, and that has, of course, also shaped who I am and how I lead. In the 70s, actually in 1977, the Swedish government put out a vision, what they refer to as the zero vision. And that stands on 3 pillars, but actually the zero vision means 0 death or severely injured in the traffic in Sweden. In 1977, we were roughly 8 million people in Sweden. Yes, it's not a big country, it's not big today either. And 1,300 people were killed yearly in traffic. Today, we are 10 million. There is much more traffic. But last year, unfortunately, still 230 people were killed in traffic. But the 3 pillars that this zero vision was built upon was not only to target the vehicle manufacturer, it was actually to think about that this is a system, because we need to work with legislations, we need to work with the road safety, we need to work with the vehicle safety. So again, safety is, and it goes all across. But it's not only there for me, it's also in the vertical. How do we create safe environment for the people in the mine? How do we create safe environment for the people driving our vehicles? How do we create a safe environment for the people servicing our vehicles? How do we create a safe environment for the people working with the recirculation of our vehicles? We are all part of that system. And as I said before, the vision coming to 0 death and severe injuries is about also looking into how do the traffic environment look like. We have taken away a lot of, in Sweden it's bad or difficult left turns. Here in the UK it's probably more severe right turns that you do, where you have those crashes. So roundabouts, yes, that's one way. Have different intersections so that we don't even have to pass is another one. But this has really shaped me as a leader and as a human being. And I'm also proud of working for a company who have the core value safety as part of the DNA. Because when we're talking about driving prosperity, prosperity is really about also making sure that everyone comes home safe from work. When you leave in the morning, you should come home safe. And sustainability is much more than only one thing. For us, it's the climate, it's the resources, but it's the people. And in the area of people, we have the safety. And being a big company like the Volvo Group, we are also responsible for driving research together with our communities around the world to see how can we improve in this area. And we need to stretch beyond legislations, because legislation sometimes is ahead of us, but sometimes, like in the EV industry today, I would say legislation is following. The legislation is not as fast. The standards are not as fast. So that means that all of us in this room and all of us who are not joining this album conference needs to come together to shape the future of electric vehicle industry. Because as I said before, we have set up targeted for Volvo, but this is not only Volvo. I think many of you can buy into this. But looking into safety specifically, we have actually said we should have 0 workplace accidents, and we should have 0 accidents with our vehicles. We take it one step further, because this is a promise to the next generation that will come after us. I have 3 grandchildren, 3 young daughters or granddaughters, 6 months old and 2 who are 3-year-old. So this is my promise to their generation, that I will do everything in my power to make sure that the 1,300 becoming 230 should come down even further. I cannot do it alone, I need your help, but this is the promise that we have made. 0 accidents, not 0 deaths or 0 injuries. We need to go to 0 accidents. And it's not only Volvo. This is not only us. This is actually UN. These are some of the sustainability targets that we have there. Anyone who knows, I said about Sweden, in the 70s we had 1,300 deaths, roughly 7-8 million people around the globe. Anyone who knows how many deaths do you have in traffic in the world today? Any guess? You can pick a number, it's probably wrong, but anyway, a number.
2 million.
2 million? Any other guess?
5 million.
5 million. I'm very happy to say that you're both wrong, and unfortunately you're wrong on the upper side, but it's very close. 1.5 million deaths every year linked to traffic. Fortunately, in the Western world, I think we've come further, but we're for sure not there. We heard about the previous speech, we were talking about having separate lanes. And I mean, that's one part of it. If we don't get the separate lanes, if we don't get speed control, if we don't get intersections, etc., it will be very difficult to reach those ambitions that we've set out as a global community. And as I said, our way of thinking, when I spoke about the vertical, from the mine to the recirculation, or from using our vehicles, supporting the driver, making sure that the infrastructure works, that is the system, and that has shaped the way we do our development at Volvo. I will take some of the examples from how we develop our electric vehicles. I will not go into the details, but at least you will give a little bit of a flavor of how we think when it comes to the system around safety. And I will start here. Because, you know, we have a lot of technology. So in our electric vehicles, which is the most advanced sensor, you think? What is the most advanced sensor that will help? Exactly. We talk about artificial intelligence, but right now there is no sensor or artificial intelligence that is more exact than the driver. Which means that if we can help the driver to stay alert, if we can help the driver to not be distracted by unnecessary information, and of course support him or her while driving in a safe environment, that would of course also increase safety. So when we develop, we talk a lot about how can we support the driver when it comes to the dash, when it comes to the steering wheel, when it comes to sitting comfortably, when it comes to have a good view around, when it comes to the pop-up menu. But not only that, of course we need to have sensors to help them. How do you know that there is someone coming on the e-scooter on the right-hand side? In the past you had people walking, you had people doing biking, and you could look to the left, you could look to the right. But now people can come quite fast with those small e-bikes. And you look to the right, you look to the left, you see no one, you're about to make a turn, and all of a sudden they are there. So there come with a Volvo Active Safety Program, of course there are sensors following legislations, but we take it beyond that. So right now we are then developing so to make sure we have sensors on both sides to see, okay, is someone coming along? We have for vulnerable road users, of course, in the front, and of course we have rear view cameras and sensors in the back. And this is where we are today. Where can we be tomorrow? And of course, if there is a crash, we need to make sure that we can also have passive safety in our vehicles. First, we should avoid in any ways we can. And then, of course, if something happens, we need the first layer of protection. Then, of course, we could have airbags, we could have a lot of things. We could make sure that people are not standing in a stairway, leaning forward, because then if you crash, they will fly forward. That's the good thing with a double-decker, of course, that you have all the staircases. So if you have a fast braking, you will fall into the staircase and not out from the staircase. But not only there, of course, we need to look into battery safety. That's one thing that we get a lot of questions about, of course, because this is new technology for all of us. But also here it's about making sure that we have a safe design and that we have safe maintenance. And it's also about making sure that we have active safety, including the warnings. How can we make sure that we can give data and information to the driver? And it's about passive safety. How do you make sure that the batteries are designed in a way that is prepared for whatever could come? We all know that we discuss a lot about chemistry, but independent on chemistry, you still need to ask yourself, how have I designed the battery? How have I designed the system? How have I designed the warnings? Because that will actually make the big difference on how you do that. So going in, this is a picture that is difficult to see, but if you would have been able to see the top one to the right, it's actually about the hardware design. Because yes, it's about the cell, but it's not only about the cell, it's about how you put the cells into the modules. Can you put things between the cells so that the cells are not close to each other? And how do you define the modules into the pack? And then how do you build the casings around the modules? And how do you make sure that the high voltage cables are correctly fitted and that you don't have a risk of having live work, for instance? What is your fuse strategy? And as I said, for us, we are part of a system, and in that system we do maintenance. In maintenance we have a lot of important people working for us, with us. So in Volvo, we have created a standard which we are willing to share, just like we actually shared the 3-point seat belt for free, because that will save lives, that will save people around the world. And what that standard is actually that we've defined roles on different levels to make sure that everyone have the training they need to be able to work on an electric vehicle. Because we talk about 600 volt, 800 volts, which of course, if you do that at home, you're not allowed to do whatever you want at home, right? In your house. And the same goes for our vehicles. So together with you and our training departments, of course, we can do this. We can share with others as well. So I am, for instance, what we refer to as role number 1, and that means that I need to perform specific trainings every year, then people reporting to me, and then in the end, the person who is responsible for my workshop, he needs to have X number of trainings, and the person actually performing the job on the vehicle needs to have another set of trainings. And this is something we review every year, and this is then a standard that we roll out throughout the whole Volvo group and to all our dealerships to make sure that we know exactly how to deal with an electric vehicle. And also for people who are not supposed to work with a vehicle, then we have also sealed off the vehicles. Again, just to make sure that we're an extra safety layer. Of course, it might be decommissioned, no problem to go to it, but just put the extra safety layer and make sure we avoid human errors. And then again, coming back to that we are in a system. Yes, we are in the workshop. Yes, we are driving, but we're also charging. How do we make sure, together with EO, like we heard yesterday about Warrington on buses, that the infrastructure we are building, how do we make sure that those chargers are working as they should? Because, of course, overcharge is one of the risks that you have in an electric vehicle situation. And we need to avoid human errors, because they could be human errors, but we need to design to make sure that they are not happening. And I will share with you some of those examples as well. So looking into our active safety on the battery side. In our case, the ones that we are delivering right now, we have small cylindrical cells, which means that the energy in each cell is quite low. And the good thing with that is that, of course, if you have a short circuit in one cell, it actually doesn't spread. The second thing is that in the history, we have been able to measure heat. But that type of measurement takes some time. So now, instead, we are taking the next step. We are also measuring pressure. Because in a casing that is locked in, the volume is constant, which means that actually when you have a heat increase, you also have a pressure increase, which means that we can react much faster and give the notice to the driver. On top of that, of course, we have a system that if we get that failure indication, that we can shut down that specific battery that could be something wrong, so that the driver can take the vehicle safely to the side and take people off. But also when it comes to the workshops, human errors, I said it should be decommissioned. But there could be someone who were not trained. There could be someone who for some reason didn't understand that 20 volts is probably not what you should take away. You should only take away the connector. So if they take away the 20 volts and lift the lid, we have then what we call HVIL, hazardous voltage interlock. And that means that we shut down the whole system. So if someone disconnects something that is part of that system that we have built in, that is an extra safety layer that makes sure that people are safe. So if there is a human error, we are also preparing for that human error. We need to build safety layer on safety layer on safety layer, again with this system thinking approach. Of course, in the worst case, you could have a thermal event to the right. We could have collisions. We could have water ingress. We could have vibration issues, mechanical failures. On the electrical side, we could have overcharge, over discharge, or short circuits. In the thermal one, of course, we could have an external fire. You never know what happens. Someone is smoking, you're not allowed to smoke, but someone is smoking, put the bus on fire. How do we make sure that the batteries stay intact if that happens? And of course, it could be internal heat in the batteries. What we do is, of course, that we build safety layers to make sure that if that happens, there needs to be something that prevents the next step of these things to happen. So, for instance, collision barriers. If you go out and watch our vehicles, you can see that they are prepared for collision. If you take the double deck, we have also looked into a lot of statistics about where is normally crashes happening, to make sure that wherever we put the batteries should be where it's the most unrisky to put batteries. Robust casings, as I said. The casing itself should also be able to take an impact. Sealed modules. Like I said before, we could have water ingress, and I will come back to that also. We were talking about climate change in the previous speech as well, and I will come back to that as well. But of course, when it comes to overcharge, as I said, there is not every charger might not work properly, which means that we can also have an overcharge, which means that we need to have a fuse strategy to make sure if there is an overcharge, all our systems should disconnect so that we don't risk an overcharge. And of course, as I said, heat barriers to make sure that between the cells, between the modules, that there are heat barriers, and that we also make sure that the batteries themselves withstand external fire. Now I realize one of my slides were gone, but okay, let's go. Apparently I was not allowed to show that. Anyway, there was some nice buses from some of you guys in the audience here. And there it says that on that slide, it said the journey continues because we cannot stop. Safety, as I said, was relative. I felt safe in 1977, standing in front of the front seat, or between the front seats. Today, I hope people feel safe, but we need to take it to the next step, because in Sweden, we still have 200 deaths. Now this happens to be things still around electric vehicles, but we are not stopping there. We are stopping when we have 0 accidents with our vehicles, independently whether it's an electric vehicle or another type of vehicle. So we need to continue to work with the cells, with the design of the batteries. We need to continue to do research. In this case, we have shown a research we are doing together with the Swedish Research Institute regarding if something happens, it could be battery, it could be some type of other impact. The layout of a double deck, the layout of a single deck. We were talking about people getting older in the previous speech, but we also have people who need to come out of the vehicle if there is an accident happening. So we're doing simulation models to see how that can improve. We also do casings, like I said before. If something happens, we should make sure that whatever comes out of the battery stays outside of the vehicle. But not only, as I said before, charging infrastructure. If I go to a petrol station today or a diesel station today, I don't know for UK, I would assume it's the same in the UK. In Sweden, there is an annual check from authorities that those things are working and properly telling exactly how much have I fueled up. In Sweden, there is no such regulation today for chargers, which means that I have no control exactly if that charger is working or not working. So how do I know as a vehicle manufacturer that I will not have an overcharge from that charging point? That's why we need to work together again with the charging infrastructure community to make sure that there needs to be regulations, but there also need to be some sort of an interaction between us. First responders, they are used to working with diesel engines. How do they get enough information, and how can we support them with apps, with not virtual reality, but augmented reality, etc., so that they can do quick activities as first responders. The lower one, which could be difficult to see from wherever you're sitting, is actually where we are lowering one of the batteries into water to see how long can it stay underwater before we have any type of water coming in. We know today, for instance, in Gothenburg, a number of months ago, we had flooding actually in Gothenburg. Yes, we're close to the sea, but it's not that low as the Netherlands. So we also need to make sure if we have batteries in the floor, or close to the floor, how do we make sure that we can also take care of floodings? So it's not only for its other type of ingress, it's actually also that we need to start to think about. How do we take care of that? Because of course putting the batteries in the floor is good from the center of gravity, and it will also help reducing the weight on the body, which means that we can also reduce energy efficiency or improve energy efficiency, etc., etc., etc. But it put other requirements on us to make sure that we have a safety sign. And to the far right, lower, it's also about the logistics. Sending batteries is quite difficult because they are not as any other type of equipment or mechanics. Sending batteries is difficult, both for recirculation, but also if something happens to the batteries, but also sending it for the service market. So all of these areas, in the vertical or in the horizontal, needs to be supported. So, for me, it's really about how do we get to the zero vision? How can we jointly make sure that we do not have any accidents with our vehicles or our competitors' vehicles in the future? We need to work together, all of us. I'm willing to do a lot of research. I hope that you will join us, because it will be my team, your team, customers, together with all of you who can impact the legislations, but also about the communities. We heard about infrastructure before, and we need to improve also the infrastructure. For instance, safety zones where we can lower the speed, which we can do on our vehicles. For instance, you can have a safety zone outside a school or whatever, where we come into that zone, we slow down to 30 kilometers per hour or whatever speed you would like. And then we need to do other things together when it comes to improving. And coming back to how I started, for me, I got a gift from my grandparents. I hope that when my grandchildren, 3 years old, when they start to have their own driver's license in 15 years, or perhaps when they get married in another 10, 15 years, that they will be able to say to all of us and to me, thank you, Grandpa, for what your generation brought to us when it comes to a sustainable future, safety, and making sure that we have a prosperity in our society. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Mattias. Obviously, lots of work going on safety. It's a very ambitious aim, 0 accidents, because the difficult to control bit of all of this, you can put in all these systems, but people are really the most dangerous thing because they can be so erratic. Are you convinced you can ever completely design people out of the equation so much that you can't have accidents? Even if they were the most stupid, irresponsible people, they couldn't cause accidents.
For me, it's about the vision. I always need to strive towards 0. And that's why I'm said that I think we need to look at it as a system. I can do my part on the vehicle. We will have more improvement in the sensors on the vehicle. I mean, we were just brainstorming the other day, okay, but what if we can have from a GDPR, you know, we cannot, I cannot know where you are moving, but perhaps I can still know where you are, I mean, your phone is moving, for instance. Can that data be sent so I know that someone is coming with a high speed towards the junction? Could we somehow, as legislators, make sure that when some person is coming close to the street, that we get some sort of a signal? Because I can probably not do everything myself, but together with the community, together with legislators, we can do much more than what we do today. I'm sure of that.
Anybody got anything they want to pick up? Yes, certainly. I'll leave here.
Caroline Wilson, Intuitive Talent Solutions. Really insightful presentation, thank you. I'm curious to understand, at this point in time, do you believe we've got the capability at a leadership level to deliver prosperity for the future?
I'm very happy to be part of a group, Volvo Group, that is part, for instance, of what we refer to as the First Movers Coalition. where we're driving then, of course, as a community, how to go for zero emissions, both when it comes to the tailpipe emissions, but also how it comes to zero fossil in our vehicles. So at least I can say that the legislators are listening to the first mover coalition. But then, like we heard in the previous speech, I think we also need to make some bold decisions as legislators. And some of them we might not like. And that is a trick. I'm coming from Sweden, and unfortunately perhaps I shouldn't talk politics on stage, but we have some people who I might not fully agree to, as you understand my thinking about the system here. That is a little bit telling what people would like to hear without having a story about how to develop the society in the long run. And then you can make cheap points out of simple things without taking it into the big context. So there I'm a little bit worried, but I'm still convinced that we are moving in the right direction, and I'm willing to fight for that direction.
Yes.
Thanks, Mattias. Very, very interesting. You talked about geofencing, which at the minute is optional for operators to slow down around schools, bus stations, etc. Do you see a point in time where the human cost of speeding will force regulators to operate to say actual geofencing should be compulsory in certain areas?
I believe it could come, for sure. Today we're doing geofencing with our systems, as you say. We put out the different GPS points, and when you come into that area, we slow down. In the future, of course, we could also have other type of regulations where we have vehicle to grid, or sorry, not vehicle to grid, but vehicle to X communication, where, for instance, if you come close to a school, there could be a signal being sent to whatever vehicle to actually, here you are supposed to slow down. Because today it's up to us to put that geofence, and we can do it for our buses. But we also need to do it most probably for cars. And then perhaps we need to send that from the infrastructure to the cars.
So legislation might be a way of you're doing your bit by providing the technology, but somebody needs to enforce it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we as a community also need to propose legislations. Because I think I can also hear, again, now it comes to it, but if you take the diesel engine as an example, some legislators have chosen to ban diesel engines as a technology, which for us in the Volvo Group is very, very strange, because then we are not banning what we would like to ban, which is actually the fossil fuel. We are banning a technology that can actually burn hydrogen and make the long distance traveling much better, for instance. So I think we need to propose legislations, and that's why I say we work together. We cannot work in silos. We need to join forces to make this happen.
Okay. Anybody else? Just one last question from me. There's obviously been talk over the years about autonomous vehicles. Would they be the future? Would autonomous vehicles, both public vehicles and private vehicles, be the key to completely eliminating accidents in the longer term future, in your grandchildren's or even their children's future?
To be honest, I'm not convinced yet. I'm not saying that I will not change my mind. I was unconsciously incompetent standing behind the seat, so perhaps I'm unconsciously incompetent today as well. But I'm a little bit worried when it comes to urban areas, because there are so many things that the computers today and even AI will have difficulties. There could be a child running in that direction, and all of a sudden, boom, they go out to the left. Even if I come with yes, we know that running at 30 kilometers per hour might not kill the child, hopefully. 40 or 50 kilometers per hour would. But I think that is quite unpredictable. I believe that autonomous solutions will come gradually as driver support. We are developing some of that today with some partners. We have autonomous solutions in the Volvo Group, and of course we are benefiting from that technology. But we will start in more confined areas like depots or supporting while docking into bus stops and stuff like that. That's where I think it will start, and then it will gradually move. But taking away the driver and being full control, I think that at least in urban, it will take a long time. That's my view.
Be a lot of drivers breathing a sigh of relief. Mattias, thank you very much indeed for that.
Thank you.